air pollution can be tackled on a local level, on a personal level. Air pollution can also be tackled. And we also saw, some best practices. Example, in Singapore, what they do is they let, if you travel from particular roads, then there is travel time. So from like 6 p.m. to p.m., if you are traveling, then there coming together for sharing best practices under UNFCCC, right, which is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, where countries discuss about the means and methods to look at different methods to tackle climate change, right? So because of rising in carbon emissions, because of so much global warming, countries internationally, they do come together and share best practices, share some very important data about climate change, and thereby it's a very, it's a very international community coming together, and therefore it's considered very important. Um, so the next topic that we are looking at is, of course, water pollution. Now, if you remember, I told you when we look at water pollution, um, water is the pollution that we study is of three types. The first one is marine pollution. Then the second one is surface pollution. So surface pollution includes rivers, lakes, ponds, right? And the third type of pollution is the groundwater pollution. Okay, so remember, whenever we talk of water pollution, there are these three types of pollution, right? And without that, it does not become a wholesome topic. So we have to look at water pollution from these three perspectives. Now, water pollution is the addition of any substance to the water, which changes the chemical and physical composition of water. Um, so, what happens is that there might be a glass of clear-looking water, but we don't know whether it is polluted or not. So, there are different indicators to check if water is polluted or not, right? So, we will, of course, study those later about how we can judge or how laboratories judge whether the water is polluted or not. Pure water is the world's first and foremost medicine. So, water actually has the ability to absorb, water dissolves so many different things, right? In chemistry, we say that water is a universal solvent. Water absorbs energy, water absorbs different compounds, right? So therefore, you must have experienced that a glass of water, which is stored, in a copper vessel, or a glass of water which is stored in a normal steel vessel. Both of them have different taste, right? So a copper vessel water will have a different taste. I'm sure you must have observed it, right? Because water absorbs chemicals, water is a universal solvent, whatever is in the surrounding of it, it tends to absorb it, right? So therefore, pure water is the world's first and foremost medicine. I like this quote, so I always put this quote in the presentation because you must know about it, right? Like, how many of us actually drink 4 liters of water every day, right? So we must watch out for the water that we consume. We have to consume at least 4 liters of water every day, and that avoids bloating, right? So you must have heard of it. If you just drink water every day, sufficient amounts of water, it is going to change your health in many ways that you thought it might not, right? So therefore, water acts as a medicine for your body. We know that 95%, 70% of our body is made of water. Water is extremely vital for life on earth, and therefore water has become a very precious resource. The case of water again is that increasingly globally, there are very few sources of water. Already in the town of Africa, in South Africa, they already had no water left, right? So it was called as 0 day, where they did not even have water for drinking purposes. So water is a extremely vital resource. Water is extremely uh, limited resource, and we tend to take it for granted, especially now in the summer season. You know what, the importance of water becomes more and more important because we realize the value of water, right? Now look at this statistics. What does it say? There is, I'll just do this. Right. So what does this say? That water as a resource is extremely valuable, and it's also extremely limited. Now look at water that we have globally. If this was it, most of the water that we have, around 97%, it is in the form of oceans, right? So oceans, which means it is salty, it's gone, you cannot use it directly, you cannot use it swiftly for your day-to-day activities. Now we have a very small chunk, like, only 3% of fresh water. So, we have our big rivers, lakes, ponds, groundwater, all of that. Only 3% of global water is present as fresh water. The oceans cover about 97% of the water, right? So you can imagine that we have very, very less percentage of fresh water. Now, even in this fresh water that you have, in the freshwater stock that is available, majority of the chunk, right, about 80% of the freshwater chunk, it is locked in the form of ice, right? So ice is also not directly usable. Glaciers are also not directly usable. So again, that percentage is also gone. Now, how much do you have? So roughly you have about 20%. Okay. Now that 20% also, about 19% is locked in groundwater, and only 1% is available as fresh water in the form of lakes, rivers, atmosphere, moisture, soil, vegetation. And so you can imagine that out of the total 100% water that was present, less than 1% is available for day-to-day use. So in short, if you have to think about it in statistics, in short, if the world's water supply, let's say it was 100 liters, right? So let's say in the world, total amount of water is 100 liters. So our usable supply of fresh water is only about half a teaspoon. Yes, do you understand this vast difference in the statistic? If globally there is water supply of 100 liters, usable fresh water is how much? Just half a teaspoon. Yes, any doubts by students? If you have any doubts, you can ask or you can write it in the chat box. Any questions up till now?
No, ma'am.
So usable water is only about 1/2 of a teaspoon, right? So this makes water an extremely precious resource, right? Water is therefore very, very vital for us because we have only about half a teaspoon of water as fresh water. All of the other water is locked in glaciers or it is locked in oceans. Okay, so if you have to purify ocean water and then drink it, then it will be available. But then again, it involves a lot of process, right? You need the whole desalination industry. And of course, yes, we do have desalination plants in India. We have one in Chennai. We have one even, we have many actually on the coast. Even countries, you know, the Middle East countries, countries like Southeast Asia, many of those countries, everyone has desalination plants. But then again, it involves some cost to it, right? There is some technology, there are some efforts involved. The direct amount of usable water is very, very less. Okay, that makes water extremely, extremely vital, right? It is extremely precious source of natural resource. Okay. So therefore, I always give this statistics. I always talk about the statistic well before in the presentation, because in the lecture, because I want students to realize how limited water supply we have, right, uh, in our global stock, right? It's not that water is present everywhere, right? Only 0.5% of fresh water is available for our growing human populations, and therefore we must find ways to preserve it, right? Otherwise, you do know that on all the three levels, that groundwater, surface water, and marine water, everything is getting polluted, right? So let's now look at what are the different types of water pollution. Yes. So what are the types of water pollution? So we can also classify them as three types: a biological water pollution, chemical, and physical water pollution. Okay. So what are the types of biological water pollution? There is an infectious type, which means that they are contaminated by bacteria, viruses, worms, right? All of that, which are actually biological entities. The second type of pollution is waste, right? There is also a lot of bio waste which pollutes water, right? It basically demands more and more oxygen, and thereby it contaminates the water. Okay. Then the second type of water pollution is a chemical type of pollution. The second type is a chemical pollution, wherein there are nutrients. The first one, The major source of this is fertilizer. You know, there is agricultural runoff, which contains, of course, a lot of chemical fertilizers like NPK, and these tend to pollute the entire canal water or entire river water, right? The second one is, of course, toxic inorganic materials. There are a lot of inorganic materials. There are also organic pollutants, right? So basically, organic and inorganic pollutants, which the source of this is from industries, right? So from industries, they are polluting the nearby water sources or even oceans. So that is called as a chemical chemical type of pollution. There is I just lost a network. I'll just change the hotspot. I think it's now live visible. Physical, these were the three types of water pollution. You can always also talk of water pollution as freshwater pollution and marine water pollution. In freshwater pollution, there is surface water pollution and groundwater pollution. Okay. This is how different types of water pollution can be studied. Either you can study it as biological, chemical, or you can also think of it as fresh water and marine water. Okay. Now, look at the causes of water pollution. So the first cause of water pollution, because of a lot of natural causes, is because of microorganisms, right? There are certain that water is always filled with some type of microorganisms, may it be bacteria, may it be algae, right? Or there can be also something called as eutrophication. So we will, of course, look at eutrophication in our later lecture. That is one of the also major causes of water pollution. Then there is leaching activity. There is leaching activity. You know that if there is naturally the soil is contaminated with certain chemicals or certain products, they also might leach into water bodies which are present adjoining. Now, of course, we know anthropogenic. There is huge amount of domestic waste, there is industrial waste, and of course, agricultural runoff, right? So that way water gets heavily polluted. Now, let's look at the anthropogenic causes of water pollution. Of course, we know that we are looking at it in two ways. We are looking at it in surface water pollution and groundwater pollution. In surface water pollution, we know that domestic wastewater and sewage enters water bodies, industrial effluents enter water bodies, and also agricultural runoff. For groundwater to get polluted, what happens is that much of domestic and industrial solid waste, it enters into landfills. If those landfills are not properly sealed, the chemicals, they leach out, they enter into the ground, right? And if that ground has a water vein or if it has an aquifer, then it enters into the groundwater source. Therefore, it contaminates that groundwater source. And because India is such an agrarian country, we are dependent on agriculture. Much of our population is directly or indirectly linked with agricultural activities. We cannot always have monsoon, right? So we also depend on irrigation. So we depend on groundwater. So if we are then pumping such groundwater, it is going to be dangerous for the plants that grow, the animals that grow in that particular region. Yeah, so therefore, the causes of, I mean, the causes of leaching activity from industrial and domestic source entering into the plants, it has already been seen in India. So especially there was arsenic contamination in regions of Haryana, UP, right? The northern patch. So heavy amounts of arsenic were detected from the vegetables that were grown because the soil and the water, groundwater was found to be contaminated. Not only that, there are also some rising problems, right? What are those? So, of course, modern plastics. So plastics, they contain harmful chemicals that seep into the water. Plastics contain BPA, right? So what is that? Bisphenol A. That has been found to be very, very dangerous. It directly affects the brain. School kids, right? School children, or even just young toddlers, they have been, like the school regularly advises us to use BPA free water bottles, right? So you must not even use plastic water bottles in the first place. But if you are using plastic water bottle, it has to be BPA free, right? Why is that? Because it's a very, very dangerous carcinogenic compound. It is used to make all types of plastic actually, but the ones that are used especially for drinking water, your drinking water bottles, you must check if they are BPA free. Then, of course, there are some modern cosmetics. There is something called as microplastics. And then, so I'm sure you girls must have heard of this. There is something called as activated carbon. So basically all of these are, there's also something called as microbeads. All of these are being used in various cosmetics, and they are also entering into the ocean, they're entering into water bodies, and fish are eating those, thereby causing death of aquatic biodiversity, right? So it's a very rising concern. Let me just show it to you so you can better understand it. It's a big rising concern. Microplastics, microbeads. And so I think Nat Geo has made one very, one very important sort of documentary, just a teaser of a documentary where they show you why these microplastics are becoming a problem for us. So I'll just share the screen. These issues are, they're very trending issues. They're very issues that you must be aware of. And so I always show this to students. Okay, is the screen visible?
It was completely legal to dump plastic in the ocean until the 90s. And a lot.
Let me just turn the subtitles on so you can also read it.
A lot of that plastic is still there because plastic lasts there for a very long time. It just breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. We know that over 300 species of wildlife have ingested this material. It's been reported in animals. And so as it is eaten by animals, it actually can move up into that. And as the scientific literature on this issue increases, literally almost every habitat they've gone to, sea mounts, Arctic ice, coral reefs, deep sea, and I don't think anybody would fight anyone on an argument that plastic debris is not become a contaminant of concern. It's basically a big metal box with wings. It looks like a very long, about 12-foot on the back. 1, 2, 3. At the end is a piece we can take off. It's collectible solid. Rinse it all out, filter it through another strainer, and then put it into a jar. It's not. You want to take a look at where the rings come on the screen. It's more tiny plastic. What we're concerned about ultimately is what are the implications of trash going into the water and getting into the food we harvest? And we're still connecting the dots there a bit. We know that lots of trash goes out into the water. We know that the sonic waves breaks it down into small pieces. We know that many, many, many species of animals eat it. We also know that bigger animals eat smaller animals. And we also know that we eat those big trophy fish. And so really trying to figure out is how big a vector plastic is for transporting chemicals into the tissues of the animals that we eat every day. That's a big problem, much bigger than big chunks floating out into the ocean. We don't know exactly what that plastic is. We don't know where exactly it's coming from. And we're trying to find policy and educational solutions to know what we're targeting. We can't just ban plastic. That's not going to work. What kind of plastic is it? And what's the best policy route? Is it a ban? Is it a fee? Is it market change? Is it education and behavior change? What's the best way to tackle it? And until we know exactly what we're dealing with, we're not designing the right programs to address it.
So here, what are they showing? That microplastics are becoming a macro problem, right? The problem with microplastics is that you might not be able to see them, right? But they are still there in water, right? If we keep on polluting our water systems with plastic, then it's going to be even more of a big problem. Trash. If you have trash, if you have big chunks of plastic or big chunks of industrial waste, it is still visible. But the case of these microplastics is that they are not even visible to your eye, right? It's not easy to spot, right? Therefore, it has started to become a concern. They are dangerous because they soak up chemicals around them, right? Like, how we have a sponge. So, how a sponge is actually absorbing water. Similarly, even these microplastics, what they do is they soak up chemicals around them and they end up entering into the food chain. Okay. Of course, there is one very interesting small video about how are you eating plastic for your dinner, right? Which shows you that these pieces are so small that they pass through wastewater treatment plants, right? And they even pass into your waterways. They are entering into your food chain. Okay. So that is why microplastics are becoming such a huge concern today. Okay. So I'll just share the screen so you can uh, watch it. And of course, these are very official videos. They are made by Nat Geo. So they are of course very, very reliable. It's not something that they have made from their own ideas, right? It is our planet. Of course, we must be concerned about it. Okay, so I'm just sharing the screen. It shows you about how plastic enters into your food chain, right? So this is the effects of of marine pollution, actually.
We even find it in places where we wouldn't expect it. When researchers examined the stomach of a beach sperm whale in 2012, they found 30 square meters of tunnel, 4.5 meter long hose, and 9 meters of plastic burst, and 2 found. How is this possible? On average, a European uses and disposes of 400 kilograms of plastic per year. A large amount of plastic waste ends up on huge landfills by the sea. Today, more than 100 million tons of plastic is drifting around the oceans. Due to particular currents in the Pacific Ocean, a new continent has been amassed plastic waste the size of Europe. In some areas of the ocean, there is up to 60 times as much plastic as there is plankton. Because plastic does not rot, it lasts up to 500 years. Through exposure to sun, wind, and water, plastic is broken down into microscopic parts. These plastic particles can absorb high concentrations of agricultural and industrial toxins. Many animals mistake the plastic for plankton and eat them. Every year, more than 100,000 turtles, marine mammals, and seabirds die a slow and painful death because they starve on a full stomach because their intestines rot. Other marine creatures ingest cells, plastic, and toxins have accumulated and end up as seafood. The smallest form of plastic are microplastics. They are added to cosmetics, shower gels, and toothpaste. A tube of toothpaste contains up to 10% microplastics. Sewage plants cannot filter microplastics, and they too contaminate. In the making of plastic, hazardous chemicals are used in order to enhance elasticity and fire resistance. flame retardants contained in almost every plastic product. Exposure to heat, wrong detergents, or simply over time, plastic will go brittle, thus releasing these chemicals, which in turn, through the airways, ingestion, or through mere touch, find their way to the human body. The consequences are severe. They have increased risk of cancer, asthma, infertility, and developmental disorders. The plastic industry tries to cover up any scandals and runs a gigantic lobbying campaign to prevent strict performance of requirements. Plastic factories are built in fortresses. The plastic production process is a tiny particular. This is one of the reasons why no one is exactly sure what substances are added to the plastic.
Right, so this is very important. What are they saying? They're telling you that plastic companies actually do not reveal what are the exact compositions of those products, right? So no one really knows exactly how it is made.
Plastic factories are veritable fortresses. Plastic production process is tight and contained. This is one of the reasons why no one is exactly sure what substances are added to the plastic. Over the course of the last 10 years, only 11 chemical substances have been analyzed out of a total of 100,000. And there is hope yet. Intelligent robot nets, fishing boats, and floating recycling factories are intended to cleanse the ocean. Bioplastic made of maize or starch could replace conventional plastic. However, consumes valuable food. There's no solution for satisfying the global demand for plastic. This is why you must radically change your consumption behavior. Pay attention to the packaging of products. Substitute paper or cloth bags for plastic bags. Don't throw away old plastic, but recycle it and use plastic-free products. Are we going to allow the destruction of the earth to continue? If we act now, there may still be hope for future generations. Material infinitely turns when it's created.
So these are all the NGOs, you know, WWF and Greenpeace, right? All of these have collaborated to make this video. Of course, it's a very official NatGeo video, so you can also look at it on the internet. I will share the link with you. So maybe if due to network connection there was some problem, you can always watch it again. Okay. So this is the cause of these are the different causes of plastic. Of different types of water pollution, right? So modern plastics and modern cosmetics are the rising concern for water pollution. Added to it, of course, agricultural runoff and a lot of other industries also. Is that clear with everyone? Okay. Any questions about the different types of water pollution, the causes of water pollution? Yes, any questions? You can write it in the chat box. Yes, it's called microplastics. Yes, because you cannot see them, right? Their size is very, very small. Yes, microbeads and all are largely also a part of cosmetic industry also. Okay, any more questions? Okay, so I'll give you the attendance. The attendance is